I always talk about coaching like the movie Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio, if you've seen it. Like they have to
Sure.
go, remember they have to go super deep into this guy's dream to make him feel like he has the answer. And that's what good leaders do. That's what coaching is. If I give you the answer to this, it's always going to be mine. But if I just guide you towards your own answer, you will own it, you will love it a billion times more than if it's mine. So when it comes to developing a new project or some sort of new campaign, like people are gonna own and fight for their own idea way more they're gonna fight for yours.
Welcome to the Impact Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Morris, and what a pleasure that I have today to introduce you to this gentleman, Michael Hein. He is an absolute stud, doing big things, helping executives, leaders. He is a leadership coach, so he has a ton of knowledge, ton of experience, and we're going to get into it today. We're going to talk about impact. We're going to talk about all types of things. And I'm just super grateful to have Michael with us. So please help me welcome Michael Hein to the Impact Effect Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Love the podcast. Love the idea. Really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, man. I'm fired up, dude. I'm fired up. Today is a good day. And as you know, our listeners, we always kick it off with the same question to get things rocking and rolling. So my question to you, Michael, is what is the most impactful moment in your life that has changed everything for the future?
It's an amazing question. And I thought I had a really good answer for it. But the more I sat with it, the more the question forced me to dig through my surface level answer and find that actual moment of impact that made the difference. So my surface level answer was when I decided to go out on my own and start my leadership coaching business. But the more I sat with it, the more I had to dig down and say, that was what happened because of the moment of impact. And really it was many years earlier. I was in a job that I kind of liked, in an industry that I was okay with, but I was surviving. I wasn't thriving. And I knew that there was something more out there for me. And I don't remember how I arrived at this conclusion, but the impact was asking myself a very simple question. The question was, am I really who I used to be? And when I asked myself that question, it forced this really self-critical evaluation of, essentially am I doing what I used to be? But moreover, we all have these patterns and behaviors and habits that we've carried with us forever, right? They're just the things that we do unconsciously and routinely that become who we are and how people know us. But asking myself the question, am I really who I used to be, forced me to evaluate those things and ask, is that really who I am, or is that who I was, or can I be who I will be? That's kind of a mouthful. And so for me, it was is this the job that I'm supposed to be doing? Or am I meant for more? And it boiled down to starting something new is scary. And continuing to dig deeper through that, it's like, okay, well, why is it scary? Is it scary because I've always had a job with a boss and a support team and a marketing team and this formula and a salary? Is it scary to leave that behind? No, that's not that scary. And what I realized was really scary is I'm too old to start something new. And at the time I was barely 40. But it was like, man, now I think this moment has passed me by. Like now I have a mortgage and kids and I just can't afford to start over. It's too much risk. So then asking again, well, am I really who I used to be? Am I that person who was working that job? Forced me to just kind of honestly do some really simple math. Well, I'm 40 years old. And honestly, that means that I'm only about halfway through my working life, right? If it's roughly 20 to 60, well, I'm only halfway through. Is my next 20 years going to be just like my last 20 years? Of course not. Of course it's not going to be. So let's evaluate these patterns and behaviors and find like what we're going to take with us, and the ones that are no longer serving us, we are going to leave those behind. And so that's something I do in my practice all the time of coaching, is forcing people to evaluate these patterns, behaviors, and habits, and asking yourself, are they currently serving you or not? And can you leave some of them behind? And it's really difficult because they become part of your identity, and it's uncomfortable to think about changing part of your identity. But that is my most impactful moment, is asking myself, am I really who I used to be? Or can I be who I will be?
I love that perspective, right? Because you went back and analyzed and looked at it and then made a decision to move forward, where I think a lot of people just are in a place and they want to get forward, right? Like I love that reflection piece and how you position it to analyze and then take the step to move. Was that a hard step to move forward through?
It took time though. I mean, that's a journey of probably like 5 years, and changing careers, leaving a company that I was with for 10 years and trying something completely new, and then being like, oh man, all right, well, this isn't it. And I think like the journey that I went through was, well, this company that I was with for a long time, that's the problem. I don't want to work there anymore. Let's try something new. I went to go sell software. And I was like, software will be great. I'll love it. And then it's like, man, that's not it either. And like, maybe it's not software. And eventually it came down to like, you know what? It's just that it's not the industry or the job. It's that I don't want to have a boss. And I want to choose my own adventure here. And that took a really long time. And then it was like, okay, well, I know I want to do something on my own, but like, what is that? How do you what do people even do? And it took me another forever to realize that coaching is a job. This thing that I had been kind of doing my whole life, managing teams, you can actually get paid to do that. And a lot of people do it. And it's a huge industry. It's like, well, wait, I'd be really good at that. And I would really like to do it. So now let's go down that road. And then I had to figure out, well, how do you do that? And I went back to school for it, and I did all these things. And then, I was moonlighting it. I was working my normal job and doing coaching on the side. And then I got laid off. And so it's like, okay, now's the moment of truth. Like, do I go back to the well and try to find another job? Or it's like, this is what I want to be doing. Buckle up. We are going all in on it. And when I say we, I mean me and my wife, because she was instrumental in this decision as well. And honestly, it's of course, I knew in real time, I was like, I'm going to look back at this very traumatic moment and know that this was the best thing that's ever happened to me. And a few years later, there's no question that it is. But so that was a 5-year journey of changing jobs and trying to figure this out.
There's so many lessons in the story you just shared, and thank you for just giving us the time frame and the depth of how you kind of navigated that, because I think we live in this world where in the society where we want everything so fast and so quick, right? We look at the highlight reels, we look at mentors who have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years, and we look at the anomaly, right? The person who made the decision and then it all worked out perfectly and they started bringing in $1 million the first year, but that's not typical. That's the outlier. So to hear you say, it was a journey of 5 years and, you navigated through that, and it's you and your wife making that decision. I think that's so relatable to so many of our listeners and extremely relatable to my situation and scenario. I would say through that process, I want to go back because I think this is extremely important. Go back to the identity piece, right? As you were saying that, I was thinking about a conversation that I had with my wife, right? When I stopped drinking and consuming alcohol, she and I had a conversation, and the discussion was around the change of my identity, right? To make a massive transition, and in better words, a transformation, you have to start to recreate that identity. And I remember waking up the next day after the decision and saying, I'm someone who doesn't consume alcohol. Right? I didn't get a DUI. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't have anything wildly crazy happen, but I needed to focus on that identity because a lot of meetings were having a beer, a lot of connections and events and speaking gigs was consuming at the after party and things like that. So in that identity shift for me specifically, Michael, it wasn't necessarily about I can't go to the after party after a speaking engagement. I can't be at a table at dinner where people are ordering, $150 bottles of wine. My identity is someone who doesn't consume in those experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about how you navigated the change of identity. What was going through your mind? What were maybe some struggles or pullbacks of how you really transitioned into the Michael Hein that we're chatting with today?
Yeah. Well, dude, your story is amazing, and I appreciate you sharing that. And mine is not dissimilar. It also started with alcohol, and somewhere along the line in my 20s, I decided that I was the party guy, that I was going to be the last one up, and I took a lot of pride in being the last one up, and then the first one awake, like and up and ready to go, and like. Ski vacations are my favorite thing in the whole world. And that's where it manifested so much. And somewhere along the line, it was just like, I was doing it out of reflex, right? It was just part of my identity. And it's just like, wait, why am I doing this on purpose? Am I intentionally doing this, or am I just doing it accidentally? And I was like, I don't have a good reason for doing this. So what's going to happen if I don't be that guy? Like, what are people going to think? What are they going to say? And then, you know what? Nobody cared. That moment just kind of came and went. And it's like, this was my identity. It is my identity. I can do whatever I want with it. It, like, once you start shedding, well, what are people going to think? It's so easy to just be like, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want because it's my life. I have one life to live. And so that, like, honestly, that was the catalyst of this, am I really who I used to be kind of thing. And that led me to evaluate the job. And it's just like, am I going through the motions of having a job because that's just always what I've done? Like, and asking yourself, one of the things in coaching that comes up all the time is I ask people, why do you do things the way that you do them? Why is this process here? And if the answer is, that's just the way we've always done it, steam starts coming out of my ears, because it's like, that is the worst reason to do anything. And so that's kind of what it was. It's just like, well, I've just always had a job. I've always had a sales job, always had a commission, always had a salary, always made cold calls. It's like, well, like, let's be conscious about this. Let's be intentional about our identity and shift from being guy with job to being guy who makes his own company.
Conscious and intentional about
Yes.
my identity. Let's go.
Yeah.
Conscious and intentional. Man, intentional identity. Intentional identity. Man, that hit right there for me. It's funny because, we get into these rhythms, these patterns. You talked about it earlier, right? Those habits. And sometimes we're not even aware. Sometimes we don't even realize. And then we start to kind of move out of the box, move out of, the norm, and reflect and vision and look at all these opportunities that maybe we just weren't seeing through the perspective because of those habits, because of those decisions. And when I think about those things, man, I think it's so relatable because it may not be alcohol. It may be marijuana. It may not be a drug. It may be Instagram scrolling.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all these things can take away time and energy. And are they really servicing you to live at your highest capacity? So I love the intentional identity. It's fascinating, man. Fascinating.
Yeah. What you're talking about is called implicit bias. And so our life is made up of millions of little moments. that impact how we see the world, the lens in which we interpret events. It's implicit because you don't see it. That's how you and I could be standing next to each other and see the same thing, but interpret it differently. And so through coaching, which is what appeals to me so much about it, it's what I do. Through coaching, we examine that lens to make it explicit. So you are conscious of why you make the choices that you do. Because when you know why you make the choices you do, you can then communicate that to others. And when you can communicate that, you're able to set better expectations with people that can be met easier. And that's how everybody gets happy.
It sounds simple, but it's probably quite difficult. What are some things you do, or how do you navigate some of that stuff with your clients?
As a coach, your job is almost strictly to ask questions, really challenging questions. And so someone will come with a problem, and it's very similar to what you do. You ask this question of what makes the impact. And almost everybody starts with the surface level answer. I have this problem. And it's like, okay, well, why do you have this problem? What led to this? What is the impact of this? How does it affect others? What is the consequences of these? Asking questions that challenge limiting beliefs. And it's just having someone who is, objective, essentially, to just say, well, why, hey, why do you do that? Why do you do the way you do that? And people always make this face. This is bad podcasting, but I'm going to make this face of like, whoa, oh, what? They kind of reach back and look up and kind of like squint their face. And they're like, I don't know. They always say, I don't know. I guess it's because, and now we're off and running. And now they are like really thinking out loud. And there's something about just like letting the words come out that allows you to reach back in your brain and say, I guess I do this because of this thing. I had this boss that did that. Or the way that I grew up made me do this. This system that I was in for a long time taught me to do this. And once you evaluate those things, it's like, okay, well, that's why you do things. So now I can go to my team and say, guys, I expect you to do this because these are the reasons. These are the outcomes that I want to happen. And kind of expanding the big picture for people, again, allows you to communicate really good expectations so that people can actually meet them. Because the biggest source of friction in business and in life is poorly managed expectations. How often are you just like kind of disappointed with somebody? Say you're supposed to meet a friend for lunch and they're late. And you're just like, oh, I can't believe they were late. Like that really grinds my gears. And you tell them like, hey, what the heck are you doing? Like, why are you late? They're like, oh, sorry, I was coming from another appointment. Did I not tell you that I was going to be a little bit late? And it's like, no, you didn't. Because you two didn't communicate your expectations about being on time. And now both of you are frustrated. But if somebody could have said, hey, can you be here at 12 sharp because I got a hard stop at 1 o'clock, like all of a sudden now you're communicating better expectations. But without communicating those, you're not doing anything.
It's so funny you bring up the time thing because I think we all face that, right? And how many times a week, how many times a month, how many times a year? And depending on who you're servicing, and I think it broadens through anybody you're servicing, but someone who's a high performer, someone who's an executive, right? Mm-hmm. They've got multiple meetings. They've got things that are extremely important and maybe priority to stay 5 minutes, 10 minutes into that meeting because you don't want to walk out or you don't want to leave. Maybe it's financials, maybe it's investor relations, maybe it's solving a massive problem in your organization and you're sitting down with your director of HR. But having the conversation and setting that expectation, and then also the boundary, right? Like, I think we can utilize automation for things like that. We can, navigate different strategies, but letting them know, hey, if you don't confirm 30 minutes before, because whatever, then I'll have to, we'll have to reschedule or things like that. So I think it's such a strategic way to set those expectations as well as those boundaries of if those expectations aren't met, what is now going to happen, similar to a reschedule. Mm-hmm. It's so important. And Michael, I'm still navigating and learning how to do that and grow and get better,
Yeah. Yeah. I bring it up because I'm years and years of sales. I've developed a horrible, crippling fear of being late. Like I cannot be late. Even if I try to be late, I still end up right on time. And I'm always early, and I always leave a little too early for everything, which is super fun having kids because they make that really easy.
Man, that was the biggest challenge for me. I'm like, we have to add 20 minutes to get out of the house now
Yeah.
that we've got 2 kids.
Yeah.
10 minutes for the first one. Now it's 20. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's a new
So
world.
for people that I have, and so even in my life and in business, I have to communicate like, hey, I have this. I literally say I have a horrible, crippling fear of being late. I cannot be late. If you tell me to be at a party at 5 o'clock, I'll be there at 5 o'clock. Like, that's just how I am. And I have to tell people that like I'm not going to hold you to that standard, but just understand that I will count every single minute that you show up late. I won't count it against you, but I won't forget it.
I'm the same way, man. It's like back in high school, your teacher doesn't show up to the class. It's like the 10-minute rule, and you're like, all right, we're all leaving. We're out. Not so much in business, but still watching that clock the same way as junior year of high school.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael, for you work with different industries, different levels of C-suite, different sizes of companies. What are you seeing today with some of your clients? And of course, you don't have to name any, but what are you seeing across the board as far as wins as well as failures within the leadership departments, the leaders of the industry, the leaders of the organizations?
Really good question. I work, if there's kind of like an example or a typical client for me, it's leaders in transition. So whether they have taken over a new team, got promoted, an executive that started at a new company, it's this kind of like new team feeling, and being able to create trust really quickly is difficult. Most companies do not have like leadership training, right? So even if you got promoted for the first time to be a manager, you were a doer, you're the top performer, now you got promoted to manager. There's very little like coaching or training for that. And it's so often that people come into those situations and say, all right, this worked in my last position. It will work here. It'll work for you directly. I was just talking to a prospective client last night, and he was dumbfounded that what worked at his last company didn't just work for this new group of people. And we kind of, it's a little bit of like hubris of like, I was hired for this job because of what I've done in the past. So I'll just do that again and it'll work and we'll be successful. But this new group of people doesn't have that institutional knowledge. They don't have the same personalities, the same identities, the same experiences. So a lot of times as an executive, you get hired to come in because something is probably broken, right? Like you need to come in and fix something. And that's what they go into fix it mode right away instead of learn mode. They don't ask themselves, what can I learn about this situation, about this person, about this customer? So what I coach people to do all the time is like, stop and ask yourself, what can I learn? And when you do that, you set yourself up to understand the people that are around you. And that's how you build trust. We are going to trust people that we are familiar with 10 times out of 10 compared to somebody that we don't know. And so asking people, to share not just like their background and what's important to them, but questions like yourself. Hey, what's made an impact in your career? What is it? What will 60-year-old you say about you? Really, really impactful questions like that make a huge difference. And sometimes the business environment that we're in, like we're expected to just produce right away. So I coach clients through basically doing both. Like, how do you meet the expectations of your executive leadership while slowing down and building trust with the team that you just inherited.
It makes so much sense. And as I'm thinking back of some transitions in my corporate career, you know, it's almost like the emotion I was feeling was, obviously it's new. So there's a little level of anxiety, but you want to kind of come out the gate and prove that you were the right pick,
Yeah.
right? You want to prove that you made the right decision to the president or the VP that, or the manager, director, whoever that hires you. So you want instant results. And I think we live in a world of instant results. And as we were talking earlier in the conversation, your most impactful moment and your transformation into leadership coaching, I loved it so much because you were like, it was a 5-year journey, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful moment in how you impact so many people you work with, because you are asking them to not rush through it, to slow down, to learn, to grow, to develop the skill set. So
Yeah.
when you do make that call, when you do have that meeting, the impact is actually larger and potentially more broader, right? So every single time that I've moved through something and took on a new role, from regional to director to VP, right, to CEO, whatever that was, I always felt that like anxiety. And then, and I'll be honest with you and vulnerable here, there was some ego in
Oh,
some
yeah.
of those transformations and transitions to new roles.
Yeah.
Do you
That's
experience that? Do you experience someone kind of coming in and being like, oh, you know, like I gotta crush this thing and I gotta do it and I gotta, it's off to the races because I need to prove it not only to the leadership, but prove it to myself.
you couldn't be more spot on, and that is something that every one of us fights. And that's your examples of this. An executive coming in is big and important, but think about, like, a really simple explanation of this is, think about when you're in a conversation with somebody and you have found yourself not listening to what they're saying because you're now thinking about your response. You're thinking about, like, ooh, I can, like, I want to tell them about this thing that I read or this project that I did because I want to relate, or I just want to show how awesome I am is really what it is. Like, we all do that all the time. And so part of coaching is learning how to quiet that part of your brain that really wants to prove that we are right and how cool we are. Because, like, yes, it's not going to make you a good conversationalist if you just always do that. And as a leader, that does not inspire trust. Like, that erodes trust when you don't take the time to really listen to the people around you and validate their feelings, because you're always trying to say, hey, great point, I've got something, I'm gonna put my own stamp on this thing that you said. So, I mean, a really good, it's a small example, but it's something that we all do all the time. And so just learning to quiet that part of your brain that really wants to be right and really want to show our ego is really hard to do. And then the second part of that, going back to the kind of new job question, is there's a really, I think it's a book, but it's a common phrase that what got you here won't get you there. You've heard that before, and a lot of people have.
I think Marshall Goldsmith wrote that book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those books that I read forever ago and just kind of like stuck with me, but it becomes just part of your vernacular and your ether.
Totally, man. It's powerful. I mean, you gotta do some new things. You gotta look at things differently. Have a bigger team. Maybe you have a smaller team, right? Like, maybe there's more on the line. Maybe you're more responsible for additional revenue, verticals, horizontal revenue streams. Like, it's thinking you're going to get the same results by doing the same thing or better results. What is that? The definition of insanity: doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results?
Yeah. And it's super easy to say, really difficult to do, because of the ego that you mentioned earlier, and the fact that it's these habits and these just reflexes that we go through. So without, like, really self-critical evaluation, it's hard to understand that what got you here won't get you there. And every time you move up in a company, you get farther and farther away from the actual like work, the frontline work that's being done. And so those skills that got you to your new job slowly become more irrelevant, and you have to develop new ones. You get farther away from the actual product and closer to more and more spreadsheets, unfortunately. Right. And so you have to like think and see the business differently. It's really difficult to do. And a lot of companies just kind of, hope for the best. And as we know, hope is not a strategy. So that's, to go back to your question earlier, like coaching, just like really critical questions of like, why? And if you don't have good answers, then it helps you develop better answers.
I remember when the first coach I worked with and hired asked me a question of, why I was doing something. My response was, that face that you made.
Yep.
Looking up, squinted eye.
Uh-huh.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And then I followed up with, I haven't thought about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where it all started getting broken down, and I'm answering a lot of my own questions, right? But if you didn't ask me that question, if my mentor, my coach at the time didn't ask me that question, it never would have put me in the place to realize I didn't have the answers to then go find them.
Oh, that's really good, because that ties right in. Having the answers ties right into some of these questions about leaders. Is the more important you get, the more you are expected to have the answers, right? And that becomes part of our reflex. But really good leaders, when you study really good leaders, they don't focus on the answers, they focus on the questions. And even if you know the answer, giving someone the answer, it still makes it your answer. It's not theirs. It's not their idea if you give it to them. And I always talk about coaching like the movie Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio, if you've seen it. Like they have to go super deep into this guy's dream to make him feel like he has the answer. And that's what good leaders do. That's what coaching is. If I give you the answer to this, it's always going to be mine. But if I just guide you towards your own answer, you will own it. You will love it 1 billion times more than if it's mine. So when it comes to like, developing a new project, or some sort of new campaign, like people are gonna own and fight for their own idea way more they're gonna fight for yours. So let them do it. The hardest part about that is it's not gonna be the way that you would do it. And so you have to relinquish that control and just kind of breathe through it and know that it's gonna be okay. This is what you pay these people for, is to have good answers.
Totally. What a big lesson right there, Michael. What a big lesson to just let them do it their way and be the guide and the support, and kind of like the bumpers, right? Opposed to like, do this exactly like this, but be there just in case it goes way too offline. What a great perspective. Yeah. Michael, as we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners from your experience, or from maybe some of the current work you do, or even some of the past work with some of your clients? Is there anything you want to leave us with before we wrap up today?
Yeah, a little mini coaching lesson that comes up all the time is back to this idea of questions. Like just self-evaluate the interactions you have with people, whether it's one-on-ones or team meetings or client meetings. Are you asking questions, or do you immediately reach for advice? Or like personal stories. If most of my clients would say that if they would say, oh no, I'm really open to it. But then when you start really like taking stock of what you do and evaluating yourself, man, you'll realize that you reach for advice all the time. And that is sometimes what you need. I'm sure your team needs you to be an expert at some points. But most of the time, a good leader is going to ask way more questions than they are, give statements. And so I would just ask you to take stock of your interactions throughout the day. Are you asking questions, or are you, delivering statements? And I would urge you to have a 2-to-1 question to statement ratio.
Man, What a powerful lesson, man. Mic drop right at the end, Michael. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you so much for being on the Impact Effect podcast. It's such a great opportunity to learn more about you, get to know you. And I'm very grateful for the lessons and the stories that you've shared with us today. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. The podcast is terrific. And, obviously I appreciate the reflection that it forced me to do. As a coach, I got to actually coach myself through this. And that was a very welcome opportunity for me. So thanks for reaching out. Thanks for having me. This is great.